But it's weird. Most people would probably think, how could that ever apply to yoga? And I want to talk about yoga, but most people see that as kind of a singular activity. But you're saying it's not necessarily a singular activity, and you can learn something from that martial arts part.
Yeah, well, it's more with the wrestling or martial arts or moving somebody else that comes into teaching yoga and assisting other people. Because when you assist somebody into a pose, you're essentially creating space for them to go deeper, the space for them to explore, and you create this connection, this unity or this oneness, which is really what I think we all have a different opinion of what yoga is. Just like most things, we define things with words, and to define anything with a word, you have to create some sort of boundaries around it. You being like a scientist person, you understand that to understand something, you break something down, you create its limitations. Most things we understand it by the opposite. We only understand light by darkness or darkness by light, hot by cold. There's a beautiful saying that I love, that a blind person will never know darkness. And it's really helped to teach me perspective, because without light, how can someone know darkness? So we define things like this, and everyone's always trying to define what yoga is. But the second that you draw a line in the sand, you create a division. There's two sides. Well, yoga means union, it means connection. So to put yoga into a box, by that very nature with language, which we use to understand things, immediately makes it so we can't understand what it is.
Yeah, I think it was Terence McKenna that said, I don't know who discovered water, but it certainly wasn't a fish. And I think his point is that, sometimes we're in this reality and we don't know we're in there, and we're trying to define things. He also said that after you come back from, say, a plant medicine ceremony, which I've had a few, when people try to ask you what happened, language cannot even begin to explain what happened. So we're really limited by our language.
Exactly.
Some say it's like, a prison in some way, because all these words have these different meanings. It's funny because I was just with Sadhguru, and he said exactly what you just said when he defined yoga. He said yoga means union. Everything in your experience becomes one. All existence is just one energy. And it's interesting that you just said the exact same thing. And a lot of people want to know what it is, and a lot of people have different versions of what it is, right?
The thing about truth, and why you constantly hear the same thing over and over from different people said in different ways, because there's only one truth. It's apparent. It's self-apparent. And when you realize what it is, that's the only thing you want in your life, and you move after that. There really is only one truth. So in yoga, the word for truth is sat. And sat means unchanging. Well, if we know that the universal truth of nature is that everything is changing, everything in the universe is continuously moving through growth or decay. Nothing is ever staying the same. Like in mathematics, we have things that are constants, but if I were to take something, if you go to Greenwich and you look at like what a foot is, or a meter, or even where Greenwich is, it's not even where it was when they made Greenwich Mean Time.
Right.
It's moved quite a bit, because everything is continuously changing. And so how can something be true if our definition of truth is that which does not change? Because if it's true, then it's always true, it always was true, it always will be true. And if everything is changing and there's not one thing in the physical world that we know that is unchanging, then that means nothing is true except for one thing, which is the present moment. The present moment is this window that we have that has been here since, time is only a way that we understand the present moment. It's actually an illusion. Yogis call this Maya. Maya means not as it appears. Like a magician doing a trick, it's not what it seems to be. And we spend so much time thinking about time, the future and the past, which time, when we think about time, we never think about time as now. As present, that's truth. That's actually what we're seeing. And so for us to be true is for us to be here, to be present, to actually be in this moment, to live our life in this moment without the stories that we create, the projections of ourselves in the future, the ideas of ourselves in the past, or the stories that we bring from the past. All these things bring us out of the actual reality, which is now. And all the truths that you'll understand about life, the truths that are unchanging, you'll understand them in the present. And so when you talk to people that are seeking for the truth, for spirituality, this idea of what spirituality is.
You don't like that word?
It's not that I don't like that word, it's like we define everything. So, and we have different definitions of what spirituality is. I looked it up in the dictionary because I think I wrote in a blog or a post or something, I wrote mind and body connection, because that's what yoga is. When you talk about movement and what brought me into yoga, it was understanding that my mind is not different than my body, and it's not different than my spirit. But spirit is such an interesting word that's defined in so many different ways. If you're religious, it's your soul. It's this thing that is also unchanging that moves on to heaven or whatever, or hell, or it's something separate from you, though.
Right.
Generally, the way that spirit in that way is thought of. The body is different than the spirit. But the way that I think about spirit is nature. And there's 3 types of nature. We have inner nature, which is our spirit. It's our self. We have outer nature, which is what we're continuously moving away from, which is why we can't understand what it is to be here, because we are so far out in distractions. We're so far away from what truth is. We are distracting ourselves because we're scared of the third nature, which is true nature, which is the unity of all things, and really understanding ourself as not separate from everybody else. It's this removal of ego.